I never thought I would be betrayed by my own family, that the day I tried to celebrate my daughter's wedding would turn into a nightmare, with lies, secrets, and poison words threatening to destroy everything I loved. My sister-in-law, the woman who claimed to care about family, stood there smiling while trying to tear us apart, to drag my late husband's reputation through the mud, and even threaten my daughter's happiness. I felt helpless, angry, and betrayed, watching her spread rumors, bring up secrets that should have stayed buried, and manipulate everyone around her. I thought the pain would never end, that the shadow of her hatred would haunt us forever. But then, in the midst of the chaos, the truth came out. A secret child from my husband's past, a letter that revealed his love and integrity, and suddenly the tables turned. Justice arrived slowly but surely, and for the first time in years, I saw my family heal, free from her poison, free to love, free to laugh, and free to be whole again. This is the story of betrayal, anger, heartbreak, and ultimately, sweet, unstoppable justice. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share something like this, but what happened to me still feels like a scene from a movie. And maybe by telling it, I'll finally breathe easier. So here it is, the wedding that was supposed to end in disaster, but was saved by one strange, almost accidental moment. It all started with my daughter's wedding. Now, anyone who has ever planned one knows how stressful it can be. But in our case, the stress didn't come from the flowers, the menu, or the dress. No, it came from family. Specifically, from my late husband's side of the family, people who always thought they were entitled to everything. I'll give you some background. I'm 62 years old. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and ever since then, his sister, my sister-in-law, has treated me like I somehow owe her family. You see, when my husband died, there was a question about inheritance. He left me everything, but his sister swore that part of it belonged to her, despite there being a clear will. For years, she's been throwing little comments, cold looks, and nasty gossip into every family gathering. Now, my daughter, let's call her Anna, was marrying the love of her life. A wonderful man, and I wanted her day to be pure joy. But of course, I knew my sister-in-law, Marlene, would find a way to stir drama. I just didn't know how far she'd go. The weeks leading up to the wedding were already tense. Marlene kept calling Anna, asking, "Are you sure you want to invite me?" I wouldn't want to cause awkwardness. That false humility made my blood boil. She knew very well she wanted to be there, if only to remind everyone that she believed I'd stolen what was hers. The night before the wedding, Anna and I were sitting together, going over the last details. She was glowing, happy, and nervous. Suddenly, she said something that sent a chill through me. "Mom, Aunt Marlene asked if she could make a toast tomorrow." I didn't know how to say no. A toast for Marlene at my daughter's wedding. I could already imagine the disaster. Her standing up, glass raised, pretending to be polite while dropping little daggers about the past. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was furious. "Anna," I said softly, "your father would want this day to be about love and happiness, not old grudges. If she even hints at our past, I will stop her." My daughter nodded, but I could see she was torn. She didn't want to upset anyone. The wedding day arrived. The church was beautiful, the flowers perfect, and Anna, well, she looked like an angel walking down the aisle. For a moment, I thought maybe everything would be fine. But then came the reception. I saw Marlene the moment she walked in. Expensive dress, smug smile, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. She hugged Anna tightly, and when she spotted me, she gave me that same fake smile I'd seen 100 times. The kind that says, "You think you've won, but just wait." Dinner passed smoothly. People laughed, clinked glasses, and told stories. Then the time for toast came. First, the best man, funny, heartfelt. Then, Anna's maid of honor, teary and sweet. And then, Marlene stood up. "May I say a few words?" she asked loudly, her voice dripping with false sweetness. My stomach turned. She raised her glass and began. "At times like these," she said, "we celebrate not just love, but family. And family is complicated, isn't it? Sometimes people take things from you, and you have to forgive them. Sometimes you lose what was meant for you, and you have to accept it." I froze. My worst fears were coming true. She was doing it. She was dragging up the inheritance at my daughter's wedding, in front of everyone. I glanced at Anna. She looked pale, uncomfortable, her groom squeezing her hand under the table. People shifted in their seats. A few cousins shot me nervous looks. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. And then it happened. Just as Marlene was about to continue, a small sound broke the silence. A chair squeaked, and an old man, sitting near the back, stood up. I hadn't even noticed him before. He was a distant relative, one I barely remembered. My husband's uncle, who hadn't attended family gatherings in years. He cleared his throat and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Marlene, that's enough. We all know what you're talking about. It's a lie. Your brother left everything to his wife because he trusted her, because she earned it. You're embarrassing yourself and ruining this day." The room went silent. Marlene's face turned red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She stammered, I was only trying to, but Uncle George, that was his name, I remembered suddenly, cut her off. Trying to poison a wedding with your bitterness? I won't stand for it. Sit down. The power in his voice shocked me. And just like that, the whole room shifted. Guests nodded. Some even clapped softly. Marlene sat down, humiliated, her glass trembling in her hand. Anna whispered to me, tears in her eyes, "Mom, it's like Dad sent him." And that was the moment everything changed. What was supposed to be a disaster turned into something unforgettable. For the first time in years, Marlene was silenced. She didn't speak another word the entire night. The wedding continued with laughter, dancing, and joy. My daughter had the night she deserved, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The moral? Sometimes justice comes when you least expect it. Sometimes the truth doesn't need you to fight. It finds its own way to shine through. That wedding could have ended in heartbreak, but instead, it ended in peace. And I'll never forget the sight of Marlene sitting there, silent, realizing that her power was finally gone. Because karma always knows when to show up. I wish I could tell you the wedding was the end of it, that after Marlene was shut down in front of everyone, she finally learned her lesson and moved on. But if you've ever dealt with people like her, you know it's never that simple. For a few weeks, everything seemed calm. Anna and her husband went on their honeymoon, came back glowing with happiness, and started their new life together. I thought maybe, just maybe, Marlene had been humiliated enough to stop her endless attacks. But then the phone calls started. At first, they were small, almost polite. She'd call Anna and say things like, "I hope you enjoyed the wedding," even though some people clearly stole the spotlight. Or she'd send texts late at night. "You'll understand one day why I fought so hard for what was rightfully ours." Anna tried to ignore it, but she's soft-hearted. She didn't want to block her aunt. She kept telling me, "Mom, she's just bitter. I don't want to cause more family drama." But Marlene didn't stop. The first real crack came at Thanksgiving. It was supposed to be small, just Anna, her husband, me, and a few close relatives. But at the last minute, someone thought it would be kind to invite Marlene. I didn't want her there, but I also didn't want to look like the villain who excluded family. So I stayed quiet. She arrived with her usual smug face, carrying a pie she probably bought from a store and pretended to bake. For the first hour, she was on her best behavior, complimenting Anna's cooking, smiling sweetly at her new son-in-law. But then, as people relaxed, she started. "So," she said, stabbing her fork in her plate, "when do you two plan to buy a house? I suppose your mother will be helping you financially, since she has so much to spare." The room froze. I saw Anna's husband stiffen. I wanted to scream. But Anna, bless her, tried to smooth it over. "We'll figure it out ourselves, Aunt Marlene. Don't worry." But Marlene wouldn't let go. She laughed, a sharp sound. "Oh, come on. We all know your mother sits on money that was never really hers. I'd hate to see you kids struggle while she hoards it." That was it. I slammed my fork down and said, "Marlene, enough. If you bring this up one more time in front of my daughter, you will not be welcome in this house again." The table went silent. Marlene's eyes narrowed. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue, but something in my face must have stopped her. She stood up, muttered something about not being appreciated, and stormed out. It ruined the holiday. Everyone tried to pretend it was fine, but the mood never recovered. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. At first, I thought it was a Christmas card. But no, it was a legal notice. Marlene had hired a lawyer. She was contesting the will. 10 years after my husband's death, she was trying again, dragging me into court. I couldn't believe it. I sat at my kitchen table, the paper trembling in my hands, tears streaming down my face. I thought we'd finally put this all behind us. But she was determined to rip open old wounds. When I told Anna, she burst into tears. "Mom, why is she doing this to you? To us? Hasn't she done enough?" And that's when I realized something. Marlene wasn't just after money. She was after control. She wanted to remind us that she could still make our lives miserable. The court battle started, and it was ugly. She painted me as some kind of thief, claiming my husband had been pressured into leaving everything to me. She twisted family stories, dragged up old arguments, even tried to convince cousins to testify against me. But here's the thing about lies. They don't hold up under the weight of truth. I brought forward the original will, signed and witnessed. I had letters from my husband, written in his own hand, saying he wanted me and Anna taken care of. And most importantly, people remembered Marlene's behavior over the years. Her bitterness wasn't a secret. One by one, her so-called witnesses backed out. Some even apologized to me privately, saying they'd felt pressured by her. Still, the process was exhausting. Court dates, paperwork, endless stress. At night, I'd lie awake, my chest tight, wondering how much longer this would go on. The turning point came one cold December morning. I was sitting in the courthouse, hands clenched in my lap, when the judge finally spoke. After reviewing the evidence, it is clear this was executed properly and reflects the wishes of the deceased. This case is dismissed. Just like that. Years of Marlene's bitterness, her schemes, her cruelty, wiped away in a single sentence. I felt tears sting my eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. Anna hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Marlene, meanwhile, sat frozen, her face twisted in shock. She tried to argue, her voice rising, but the judge shut her down. "Ma'am, this case is closed. Do not waste this court's time again." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. And you'd think that would be the end of it. Justice was served. Truth had won. But here's where the story takes another turn. Because instead of disappearing quietly, Marlene decided to take her revenge in another way, by targeting Anna directly. She started showing up uninvited at Anna's house, making little comments about how she should be careful with her new husband. She spread rumors among family friends, whispering that Anna had married too quickly, that her husband was probably after money. It was cruel, manipulative, and so obviously driven by spite. But for Anna, so young, so newly married, it cut deep. One night, she called me sobbing, "Mom, I don't know how to handle this. She's trying to ruin my marriage." And that's when I realized this wasn't over. Not yet. If there's one thing I've learned about people like Marlene, it's this. When they lose one battle, they don't surrender. They just change the battlefield. After she lost in court, I thought she'd finally give up. The will was settled, the money secure, the case dismissed with finality. But instead of backing down, she turned her attention to something more personal. My daughter. Anna was only 27, newly married, still finding her footing in life. She was excited about her new job, about building a home with her husband, about dreaming of children someday. And Marlene saw that light, that happiness, and decided to smother it. It started small. A phone call here, a message there. "You don't really know who you married, do you?" she'd say with that syrupy voice. Or, "Are you sure he isn't after the inheritance your mother guards so tightly?" At first, Anna brushed it off, but then Marlene escalated. She began showing up uninvited. Once Anna called me, her voice shaking. "Mom," she was sitting in her car outside our house for an hour, just watching. I told her to call the police, but Anna didn't want to. She kept saying, "I don't want to start a war." But war was already here. The breaking point came one Saturday night. Anna and her husband had invited a few friends over for dinner. They were laughing, enjoying themselves, when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Anna opened it, and there was Marlene, standing with a manila envelope in her hand. She marched into the house like she owned it, and slapped the envelope down on the table. "You should see this before you waste more years of your life," she said coldly. Inside were copies of old documents, some dusty, some yellowed. At first glance, it didn't mean much. But then I realized what they were: papers from my late husband's past. And at the very top was a birth certificate. Not Anna's, not mine, a different name, a child I had never heard of. The room went silent. Anna's husband looked confused. Anna's face drained of color. Marlene crossed her arms and smirked. "Your precious father wasn't as perfect as you thought. He had another child, one he never told you about. And if that's true, then maybe the will isn't as clean as you think." I cannot describe the shock that ripped through me. My late husband and I had been married for over 30 years. He was a good man, a kind father, a loyal partner, or so I believed. The idea that he might have had a child before me, a secret child he never told me about, felt like a punch in the chest. Anna looked at me, her eyes wide, her voice trembling. "Mom, is this true?" I wanted to scream no. I wanted to swear that Marlene was lying, that she had fabricated everything. But I couldn't because I didn't know. My hands shook as I opened the papers, scanning them desperately for proof they were fake. But the details were too precise. The name, the dates, even my husband's signature on an old acknowledgement form. It was real. My husband, years before we met, had fathered child. He had never told me. Marlene saw the devastation on my face and smiled like a cat with cream. "I always knew he wasn't the saint you painted him to be. And now everyone else knows too. You built your whole life on lies." Anna burst into tears. Her husband wrapped his arms around her, glaring at Marlene. "Get out. Now." But Marlene wasn't finished. She leaned in close to Anna and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And you, my dear, should wonder, if your father lied to your mother all those years, what lies might your husband be hiding? It was poison, pure poison, meant to corrode." And then she left, slamming the door behind her. The days that followed were some of the darkest I can remember. Anna couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Everywhere I turned, I heard Marlene's voice echoing in my head. I sat up late at night, staring at those papers, trying to understand. How could my husband have kept something so big from me? Did he mean to tell me and never got the chance? Or did he hide it, believing it would never come out? I loved him. I still loved him, even in death. But now I was haunted by a question I couldn't answer. Who was this other child? And where were they now? Anna asked me over and over, "Mom, what do we do? Should we try to find them? Should we tell people?" And each time, I had no answer. But Marlene had one goal: to use this secret as a weapon, to rip apart the trust between me and Anna, between Anna and her husband, between all of us. And she almost succeeded. One night, Anna called me in tears. "Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore. Dad had secrets. Aunt Marlene says my husband probably does too. How do I know who to trust?" I took a deep breath, my heart breaking. "Sweetheart, your father made mistakes. But mistakes don't erase love. And Marlene? She doesn't care about truth or family. She just wants us broken. Don't give her that power." It was the hardest thing I'd ever said, because part of me was broken too. Then, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. It was from the other child. The letter read, "My name is David. I'm your husband's son. I've known about you for years, but I never wanted to disrupt your life. I only reached out because I heard Marlene was stirring trouble again. I want you to know, my father cared for you deeply. He didn't tell you about me, not because he didn't love you, but because he thought it would hurt you. I don't want anything from you. No money, no inheritance. I just want you to know the truth from me, not from her." I sat there trembling, tears streaming down my face. It was real. My husband had a son. And yet, the letter wasn't angry or demanding. It was gentle, almost apologetic. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange kind of peace. I showed Anna the letter. She read it slowly, then looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, maybe this isn't the end of the world. Maybe it's a chance for us to heal. For us to know the truth on our terms, not Aunt Marlene's." And for the first time, I saw hope in her face again. But of course, Marlene wasn't finished. Because when she found out about David's letter, oh, she exploded. She called me, her voice venomous. So, you've been in contact with him. Perfect. I'll make sure the entire family knows. Let's see how they look at you once they hear your husband lied for 30 years. You won't have a shred of respect left. And that's when something inside me snapped. I realized that as long as Marlene had control of the narrative, she would keep poisoning us. If the truth was going to come out, it needed to come from me, not from her twisted mouth. So I made a decision. At the next family gathering, I would reveal everything. The secret child, the letter, the truth. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. When I made the decision to reveal the truth myself, I felt both terrified and relieved. Terrified because I knew it would stir up emotions that could never be put back in a box. Relieved because, for once, I wouldn't be living under the shadow of Marlene's poison. The timing was almost too perfect. Christmas was approaching, and every year since my husband's passing, I had hosted a family gathering at my house. For years, it had been a tense affair. Marlene whispering her little jabs, cousins exchanging awkward glances, me forcing smiles while my insides twisted. But this year, I knew it would be different. I decided that if I was going to reclaim my family's peace, it had to happen then, with everyone present. The night came. The house was filled with the smell of roast turkey, cinnamon candles, and the hum of conversation. Anna and her husband helped me decorate, hanging garlands, setting the table, trying to make it all feel normal. But I could see the worry in Anna's eyes. She knew what was coming. The doorbell rang, and one by one, family members arrived. Cousins, nieces, nephews, people who hadn't spoken much since the wedding drama. And then, finally, Marlene. She walked in wearing a glittering red dress, her lips painted in that sharp shade of crimson she loved. She carried a tray of cookies she probably bought, pretending to bake. Her eyes flicked around the room, landing on me. That smile, the one that always said, "I know something you don't," spread across her face. I held my ground. Dinner went surprisingly smoothly at first. People laughed, shared stories, clinked glasses. For a moment, it almost felt like the family we once were. But beneath the surface, tension buzzed like static. Everyone knew the elephant in the room, Marlene's constant war with me. Finally, after dessert was cleared, I stood up. My hands were shaking, but I steadied my voice. "Before we end tonight, there's something I need to share," I said. The chatter died instantly. Dozens of eyes turned to me. Marlene smirked, leaning back in her chair like she was ready to enjoy the show. I took a breath. Most of you know that Marlene has struggled to let go of the past. She has accused me of taking what wasn't mine, of hiding things, of lying. I've stayed silent for years because I didn't want to drag you all into it. But silence only gave her power. And tonight that ends. Gasps echoed softly through the room. I pulled out the letter, the one from David, and held it up. My husband, before I knew him, fathered child. His name is David. I only learned of his existence recently. He wrote to me, and I want to share his words. I read the letter aloud. My voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. Every word carried the weight of truth. That my husband had loved me. That he had kept a secret not out of malice, but out of fear. That David wanted no money or inheritance, only peace. When I finished, the room was silent. Some family members looked shocked, others confused. But then Anna stood, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "My father wasn't perfect," she said, "but he was a good man. And my mother has carried his legacy with dignity, while Aunt Marlene has done nothing but spread hatred. This letter doesn't destroy us. It frees us." The silence broke into murmurs of agreement. Heads nodded. Eyes turned toward Marlene. Her face was a mask of rage. She shot up from her chair, her voice trembling with fury. "You can't believe this. You're all fools if you think this so-called letter changes anything. She's still been lying to you for years. She built her life on deception, and now you're eating it up like it's gospel." I held her gaze. Calm, unafraid. "No, Marlene, you've been the liar. For 10 years, you've twisted everything, poisoned every gathering, dragged us through court, humiliated us in public. And for what? Not justice, not truth, just your bitterness." The room erupted, not in chaos, but in support. Cousin spoke up. She's right, Marlene. You've gone too far. We're tired of your drama. Why can't you just let people live in peace? For the first time, I saw fear flash in Marlene's eyes. She realized she was losing her audience. Her power had always come from whispers, from planting doubt. But now the truth was out in the open, and she had nothing left to twist. And then, the moment I'll never forget. The doorbell rang. I frowned, confused. We weren't expecting anyone else. Anna went to open it, and standing there, nervous but determined, was David. The room gasped. Marlene's jaw dropped. He stepped inside, holding nothing but a small envelope in his hands. I didn't mean to intrude, he said softly, but I thought it was time you saw my face. I'm not here to take anything. I just wanted to meet the family my father loved so much. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I couldn't move. But Anna did. She walked straight to him, hugged him, and whispered, "Welcome." The rest of the room followed her lead. Cousins shook his hand. Nieces smiled. People asked gentle questions. It was awkward, yes, but it was human. And Marlene? She stood frozen, her face twisted in disbelief. She had tried to use David as a weapon, and here he was, standing in our home, embraced not as a scandal, but as family. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "This is insane. You're all fools. He's just here to take what's ours." But no one listened. No one turned toward her. For the first time in decades, her words had no weight. She was a shadow, screaming into the wind. I walked over to her slowly. My voice was calm, but it carried every ounce of strength I had left. "Marlene, it's over. The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, it ends tonight. You're not welcome in this house again until you can respect this family. If that means never, so be it." Her face went pale. She sputtered, opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. She grabbed her purse, stormed to the door, and slammed it behind her. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. But instead of fear, it left peace in its wake. The rest of the evening was unlike anything I'd experienced in years. Laughter returned. David shared stories about his life. Anna held his hand and said she wanted to get to know her brother. For the first time, we weren't living in Marlene's shadow. When everyone left that night, Anna hugged me tightly. "Mom," she whispered, "you were so brave. Dad'll be proud." I looked around the quiet house, my heart heavy but full. My husband had kept a secret, yes, but love and truth had found their way through the cracks. And Marlene? She had finally been stripped of the one thing she craved most, power over us. The night after the confrontation, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the events in my mind, thinking about Marlene, how she had screamed, how her power had crumbled before our eyes. For decades, she had thrived on manipulation, whispers, and fear. But finally, she had no more tools left. And yet, part of me wondered, would she truly change? Or would she strike back in some other, more subtle way? A few days later, news arrived. Not directly to me, not in person, but through the whispers that travel fast in any family. Marlene's business, her so-called family trust that she had built her life around, had been investigated. It turned out that, in her obsession with money and control, she had mismanaged funds, falsified records, and even attempted to claim assets that weren't hers. The irony was almost poetic. She had spent years accusing me of taking what was hers. And now, the law itself had stripped her of any claim to the wealth she prized so much. By the end of the week, she was forced to close the business entirely. Her name appeared in the local papers, not in the society column, but in the section about financial misconduct. I didn't celebrate, but I felt a heavy sense of relief. The world had finally recognized what we already knew. Her obsession with control would always be her undoing. Meanwhile, our family began to heal in ways I hadn't imagined possible. David, my husband's son, came over regularly. Anna embraced the role of a sister she never expected to have. They laughed, teased each other, and slowly started building a bond. I watched them, and my heart swelled. Even the rest of the family shifted. Cousins who had once tiptoed around Marlene began speaking freely, sharing memories, laughing at old jokes, and, most importantly, respecting boundaries. Our gatherings no longer carried the weight of hidden grudges. Then came the moment that truly cemented Marlene's fall from power. She attempted to attend a family reunion, something she had always used as her stage, where she could sow conflict and assert authority. This time, however, she was met with something she hadn't anticipated: a united family. "Sorry, Marlene." My voice was calm but firm. "You're not welcome here. Not now. Not ever. You've shown us who you are." Her mouth opened in protest, her eyes wild. "I'm family. I have rights." I shook my head. Family is more than a name on a birth certificate. Family is respect, love, and trust. You've forfeited all three. The room behind me, the cousins, the aunts, the uncles, nodded in agreement. Not a single person moved to defend her. Her face went pale, and she stormed out, muttering threats that no one bothered to hear. It was the ultimate karma. After years of trying to control us, she had been publicly shut out. And it wasn't just me. It was the whole family refusing to let her poison their lives any longer. The following months brought an unexpected calm. Marlene attempted minor interactions, holiday cards, occasional calls, even a brief visit to Anna's home. But every attempt ended the same way: firm boundaries, no engagement, and a quiet but unmistakable message: her power over us was gone. Meanwhile, our family thrived. David became a beloved member of the household. Anna and her husband celebrated their first wedding anniversary without fear, without whispers, without shadows. And I finally felt free. One quiet evening, Anna and I sat together by the fireplace, sipping tea. "Mom," she said softly, "I never thought we'd get here. I never thought we'd actually be able to breathe." I smiled, my eyes misting. "It took time, sweetheart, but truth has a way of coming out. And sometimes, karma has its own schedule." She laughed quietly, the tension in her shoulders easing. "I can't believe Aunt Marlene tried to ruin my wedding, my marriage, and our family, and it all just fell apart for her." "Yes," I said, "it did. And you know what? It always does in the end. Lies, greed, and cruelty, they can feel powerful for a while. But the truth and love, they're unstoppable." Looking back, I realized that this wasn't just about a wedding or inheritance or even Marlene's bitterness. It was about family, about boundaries, about truth and the courage to protect those we love. I often think about that moment when David appeared at the Christmas gathering, a stranger to me, but connected through love. That single act of stepping forward, of claiming the truth in a gentle way, changed everything. Without him, perhaps Marlene's power would have lingered a little longer. The wedding that was supposed to end in disaster didn't just survive. It became the start of a stronger, more honest family. A family that would no longer tolerate manipulation, lies, or cruelty. And as for Marlene, she eventually moved to another city, trying to rebuild her life. I heard rumors here and there. She was struggling to maintain her influence, struggling to find the same control she had over us. It was a quiet, slow kind of justice, and somehow it felt sweeter than anything I could have done myself. The moral of the story is simple. Family can endure a lot, but only when the truth is honored. Lies, bitterness, and greed might give someone temporary power, but in the end, love and honesty prevail. And sometimes, just sometimes, karma has a way of showing up at the perfect moment to remind everyone where the real power lies. Because for our family, peace and love were stronger than Marlene's envy and manipulation. The wedding, the secrets, the battles, they were just chapters in a story that ended with justice, unity, and a reminder. Those who try to destroy others often destroy themselves instead. And as I sit by the fire, watching Anna and David laugh, I know one thing for certain. For the first time in years, we are free.